Dear Presidents Festus Mohai and Mary Robinson, you continue to be presidents for us. So most welcome here. Your Excellency Ato Alemayo Tegenu, Minister of Water, Irrigation and Energy of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia and our gracious host. Your Excellency Commissioner Rhoda Peace, Commissioner for Rural Economy and Agriculture of the African Union Commission, my sister. My brother Ali Abu Sabah, Vice President of the African Alliance. Your Excellencies, Honorable Ministers, Honorable Minister Kazukwere of Zimbabwe and Minister Asigai from the Gambia, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I am delighted to welcome you all to the headquarters of the Economic Commission for Africa on the occasion of the 3rd Annual Conference on Climate Change and Development in Africa, organized under the auspices of Climate for Development in Africa, ClimeDev Africa, a program of the African Union, the African Development Bank, and ECA. If we go back in history, we all remember the time when the Black Death plague killed so many people that must have thought it was the end of their world. Important civilizations died without clear explanations for their sudden fate. The Black Death was particularly acute in Europe, spreading poverty and decimating livelihoods. What came next, though, was spectacular transformation because less people had more resources, agriculture flourished, and trade spread. With the Industrial Revolution came urbanization. These historical episodes are all related to climate change. It was climate change variations that were at the basis of Black Death. It was the stability of climate that ensued and that lasted 300 years that allowed many of the human progress witnessed in the wealthiest regions of the world. Predictable winds propelled global routes. Access to water and other key resources were abundant and remained so for a long time. Well, that time is now over, and we know it. We are all certainly expecting this conference to offer a unique opportunity and space to discuss important issues deriving from striking findings and unpredictable future. In my opinion, we need to particularly look into two interrelated issues. First, we need to persuade the skeptics of climate change in Africa on just how vulnerable we are to it. We should do this by navigating scientific findings and hard facts that make its impact unequivocal. According to the just released report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, the last 3 decades have been successively warmer at the Earth's surface than any preceding decade since 1850. In the Northern Hemisphere, from 1983 to 2012 was the most likely, the warmest 30-year period in the last 1,400 years. Scientists further predict that the current pace of warming is 10 times faster than any other over the last 65 million years. Warming across Africa is predicted at an alarming rate. We are becoming familiar with some of the effects of climate variability across the continent. For instance, the severe droughts of 2011 in the Horn of Africa, where we are, and the 2012 drought in the Sahel region affected over 23 million people. There is also the example of ongoing coastal erosion and rising sea levels that threaten the very existence of Africa's small island developing states. Earlier this year, floods devastated Port Louis, Mauritius' beautiful capital. They were caused by 156 millimeters of rainfall that occurred in just less than 2 hours, resulting in major damage. The impact of rising seas and increasingly violent and frequent storms can make many tourist beaches disappear by 2050. Even our grandeur continental symbol, the Kilimanjaro, is losing its white cap. The second issue is about leveraging the opportunities that arise from the nexus between Africa's transformation agenda and climate change. With an average GDP growth projected to remain around 5% or more, Africa is likely to outstrip Asia by 2050. It is already the fastest growing continent, despite an ailing global economy. Yet, Africa continues to be patronized and perceived as a casualty of climate change, as opposed to a contributor to the solution. It is as if debate on climate was reduced to how we can adapt to what others cause, indirectly questioning whether it is time to industrialize and follow others' successful path. This is wrong, and this needs to be counter-argued. The type of industrialization path Africa chooses will make a big difference. Africa possesses some of the best resource base for industrial production. Exporting the resources far away deprives Africans from jobs and the world of sustainability, given the CO2 emission impact of the current flows. Africa exports jobs precisely when it is about to become the largest reservoir of manpower, projected to surpass China or India by 2040. Shifting production closer to the source would be economically beneficial to Africa by creating sustainable employment and generating wealth, but also to producers, given the increasing industrial unit value accrual in Asia. If it took the UK 155 years to double its GDP during the Industrial Revolution, and Africa has achieved the same in the last 12 years, it is imperative to capitalize on growth for real transformation. That means industrialization. As countries grow, they become cleaner, more urban, more peaceful, more efficient, and better informed. This rationale is based on the environmental version of Kuznets' curve, which describes the relationship between prosperity and inequality in an inverted U shape. In a nutshell, at the early stages of growth, inequality tends to rise. At later stages, it falls. Similarly, in the early stages of growth, biodiversity tends to suffer, and in the later stages, it benefits. We can see this relationship taking form in countries like Brazil and South Korea that were considered poor until recently. As one of the most vulnerable continents to climate change, Africa's growth momentum faces a fundamental risk. For instance, agricultural production and food security could be severely compromised, given that more than 90% of Africa's agricultural production is rain-fed and therefore highly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. It is estimated that by 2020, yields from rain-fed agriculture in some African countries could decrease by as much as 50%, exacerbating food security challenges. Needless to say, this would have dire socioeconomic consequences. Livelihoods of farmers, pastoralists, and agro-pastoralists will suffer. The situation could be further compounded by acute water stress in some countries, as well as intense changes occurring across the variety of ecosystems. rapid urbanization and a population projected to double to attain 2.3 billion people over the next 40 years, representing about half of the global of the total globe's population growth, looks really daunting. It could trigger competition for resources. It can expose the world to a breakpoint with the largest and fastest urbanization seen in history. It can have devastating effects on a unique biodiversity. All of the above need not to happen, though. Africa has the largest reservoir of unused arable land, about 60%, and the lowest agricultural productivity. Copying other regions' experiences and the fortunes can be turned around. Africa needs agribusiness and a more efficient use of its resource base. A younger, more educated, connected, and urbanized Africa liberates energies, increases women participation, and allows for the IT revolution to leapfrog some of our major institutional backlogs. Industrialization can create the modern jobs younger Africans long for. They are tired of being poster children for poverty benefactors. They want to be part of transformation. Having said this, Africa is trapped in global negotiations on climate change, which on the whole are largely driven by global and external interests, not African interests. To enter the solution space, Africa must firm up its own views on how to put the continent's interests first. Climate change offers Africa an array of incredible investment opportunities that can reap dividends. Offering an African climate development policy can respond to the unique vulnerabilities and opportunities of the continent while positioning it to influence negotiations and outcomes. Let me propose a 6-point strategy. First, Africa has the potential to leap to a new clean techno-economic paradigm. For instance, the European Commission's Institute for Energy suggests just 0.3%, I repeat, 0.3% of the sunlight that shines on the Sahara and the Middle East deserts could supply all of Europe's energy needs, 0.3%. As Africa is not locked in any technology preferences, it can follow a green and clean energy pathway and leapfrog old carbon-intensive models and pursue a low-carbon development pathway. The growing awareness of environmental degradation and climate change is giving rise to new research and design priorities like clean energy technologies that could be scaled up rapidly. The continent is well positioned to absorb, adapt, and build on the vast quantities of scientific and technical knowledge already available. Many African countries, such as Cape Verde, Kenya, Ethiopia, Morocco, or Uganda, are already investing in innovative, renewable, and clean energy sectors and offsetting traditional energy sources dependent on fossil fuels, biomass, and forest resources. Second, greater investment in climate science, services, and the production of high-quality data is imperative for Africa. This is to facilitate the development of early warning systems and initiate much-needed research on climate impact, vulnerability, and adaptation, and for creating a knowledge economy. Many global, African, and national institutions are already making progress in transforming climate data, information systems, and science. In fact, one of the fundamental and priority undertakings of ClimDev Africa is to make climate information widely available. Recently, ECA, WMO, World Climate Research Program, and University of Dar es Salaam, among others, concluded a very successful conference in Arusha. The focus was on identifying African climate research frontiers to guide research in the next decade that will contribute to climate information and knowledge, inform policy decisions, and development planning. Third, we have to improve our institutional and policy capacity. There must be investment in mechanisms for a concerted engagement of all key players, from climate and social scientists to development economists, policymakers, entrepreneurs, to users of climate information, and so on. Not only would this help coordinate efforts, it would also contribute to the design of innovative multi-sectoral strategies, mainstream climate change into national development plans, and usher in a new form of deliberative democracy. To prepare for climate risks in urban infrastructure and development countries could build climate-proof urban infrastructure and development and put transport systems on a low-carbon path like Côte d'Ivoire, Algeria, South Africa, and others are doing. Fourth, investing in expanded South-South partnerships can help risk management. By systematically sharing experiences and lessons, disaster-prone countries facing similar challenges can arrive at better climate change solutions. For example, the African, Caribbean, and Pacific small island states share similar challenges. They can step up efforts to address these challenges and establish South-South cooperation to focus on their unique challenge and incubate several options that will insulate from current vulnerabilities and develop future opportunities. It is essential for Africa to go beyond the sum total of individual countries' capacities. Fifth, let us leverage Africa's agriculture. With a growing population and the ever-increasing demand for food, investments in agriculture are critical. Investing in production technologies, innovation, water use efficiency, and sustainable land management are essential. The bulk of agricultural export across the continent is still predominantly in the form of primary products with very limited value addition. Leveraging the capacity of the private sector to scale up investment in agro-processing would create jobs and diversify export commodities. Unlocking the sector's strong multiplier effect in the economy would further contribute to increased incomes and poverty reduction. And last but not least, sixth, let us use tourism for Africa's advantage and the world's biodiversity wealth. According to the UN World Tourism Organization, Africa is one of the fastest growing tourist destinations. There is already growing recognition of the urgent need for the tourism industry, national governments, and international organizations to develop and implement strategies to face the changing climate conditions. Scaling up investments in ecotourism could mitigate tourism's environmental impact, like the Gambia, Kenya, Rwanda, Zambia, Seychelles, and South Africa examples are demonstrating. Mesdames et messieurs, s'il est coûteux d'investir dans les mesures de préparation et d'adaptation au changement climatique, ne pas investir serait encore plus coûteux et catastrophique. Cela m'amène à m'arrêter brièvement sur la question de savoir si le mécanisme mondial en matière de changement climatique répond suffisamment aux besoins de l'Afrique. l'Afrique est considérée comme la région du monde qui porte le moins atteinte au climat. C'est un continent vert, pas nécessairement de couleur, mais de comportement. Ses émissions de gaz carbonique par habitant sont inférieures à 1 tonne par an. Elle contribue pour 2,4% seulement des émissions mondiales. Pourtant, le fardeau des changements climatiques, exprimé en pourcentage du PIB, est le plus élevé en Afrique que partout ailleurs dans le monde. Malgré la Convention cadre des Nations Unies sur les changements climatiques, l'Afrique reste créancière d'une dette écologique considérable. Il convient de saluer la Convention cadre pour sa pertinence au fil des années et pour avoir assuré à la question du changement climatique une visibilité au plus haut niveau. Grâce à elle, les pays développés se sont également engagés à mobiliser 100 milliards de dollars par an d'ici à 2020 pour financer l'adaptation des pays en développement au changement climatique dans le cadre du Fonds vert pour le climat. C'est une bonne chose, mais cela ne suffit pas. 21 ans après le lancement de la Convention cadre, les émissions mondiales n'ont cessé d'augmenter et les principaux pollueurs ne sont toujours pas juridiquement tenus de ramener leurs émissions au niveau requis pour éviter un changement climatique irréversible. Au lieu de cela, les pays directement responsables de 80% des émissions mondiales sont en train d'inverser la tendance en rejetant la notion de dette écologique. Les sommes que reçoit l'Afrique au titre de l'aide à l'adaptation sont vraiment négligeables, moins de 2% du total. Le développement économique ne figure pas au premier plan dans les négociateurs sur le climat et aucun accord n'a été trouvé au sujet d'un compte pertes et préjudices. Est-ce compatible avec l'Afrique que nous voulons? La prochaine conférence des parties, la 19e, qui se tiendra à Varsovie en novembre, et aura pour objectif de parvenir à un accord global sur les changements climatiques d'ici 2015. Sera l'occasion pour le continent de peser sa voix sur les débats en exigeant notamment que soient financées des recherches sur les pertes et préjudices découlant des catastrophes liées au changement climatique. Par ailleurs, la justice climatique occupera une place centrale dans les débats de la 19e conférence des parties et il conviendra d'aborder la question dans un esprit pragmatique. Beaucoup feront valoir que les principes de la justice cumulative et distributive devraient s'appliquer. Il faut espérer que les pays développés prennent l'initiative et la responsabilité de lutter contre les changements climatiques puisqu'ils ont jusqu'à présent contribué le plus. Je pense que la justice climatique ne doit pas se réduire à un moyen de régler des problèmes tels que la répartition des richesses ou de réparer les injustices de l'époque coloniale. Pour les nations en développement, rattraper le monde développé en termes d'émissions cumulées n'est qu'une question de temps. La justice climatique consiste à promouvoir une approche pluridimensionnelle englobant la responsabilisation et pas seulement à défendre l'équité dans la répartition des risques et des avantages environnementaux. La façon dont le dérèglement climatique affecte la vie et les moyens de subsistance des gens varie nettement selon les cultures, les communautés, les disciplines, les nations et les régions du monde. La justice climatique suppose d'accepter le principe de responsabilité commune, mais différenciée, et de tenir compte des capacités respectives des uns et des autres pour réduire leurs émissions de gaz à effet de serre. Les pays qui émettent le plus de gaz à effet de serre et disposent de plus de moyens pour agir doivent réduire leurs émissions les premiers. Tout accord sur les changements climatiques, digne de ce nom, doit viser un équilibre entre les coûts et les avantages. Mesdames et messieurs, dans le passé, des changements climatiques se sont produits pour le meilleur et pour le pire. Le plus souvent, sans que les hommes aient pu savoir pourquoi. Désormais, nous savons. L'Afrique peut prendre l'initiative pour éviter le pire et attendre le meilleur. Nous ne devons pas nous contenter d'être des spectateurs. Je vous remercie.